Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy anniversary to the St. Valentines Day Massacre, the most brutal Valentine's Day in Chicago history.
I know you've been looking forward to this story.
Chicago, 1929. It's the roaring 20s. Skirts have gotten shorter, and moral values have changed from stuffy Victorian to anything goes. Of course, prohibition is in full swing.
Liquor is illegal in the United States, but not hard to find if you want it, especially in Chicago. This town has everything: gambling, liquor, prostitution, and gangsters. The north side of Chicago is run by Bugs Moran. George Clarence Bugs Moran. Real name, Adelard Leo Coonan. He was born August 21st, 1893 in St. Paul, Minnesota. He went to a private Catholic school, but quit and joined a gang. Spent time in juvenile corrections facilities and had been incarcerated 3 times by the age of 21. He left Minnesota and ended up in Chicago, where he went to work for mobster Dion O'Banion and his North Side gang.
O'Banion ran an operation said to make $1 million a year from bootlegging alone at its height. He had deals with Canadian beer suppliers and ran gin and whiskey. The gang pulled off the first ever hijacking of a liquor delivery in Chicago. They also stole an entire warehouse full of booze from the railroad yards and from distilleries. Of course, they were also into racketeering, gambling, murder, extortion, and robbery. O'Banion owned a flower shop and was reported to be really good at arranging flowers. The shop was used for almost all mob funerals in the city, even rival gang members. And, since it was Chicago in the 1920s, it was a pretty busy place. The gang also used the upper floor of their base of operations. One day in November of 1924, Frankie Yale, Al Capone's boss at the time, entered the shop with 2 hitmen. O'Banion was shot 5 times, and after his predecessor Jaime Weiss was murdered, Bugs Moran took over the North Side gang. Moran was never quite as popular as number 1 rival, Capone. It's said he hated Capone with a passion.
For one thing, Moran was Catholic, and as a Catholic he found prostitution abhorrent, and he never allowed it to become part of his business. But like Capone, he had no qualms about paying off police, newspapers, and politicians. The North Side Gang's biggest rivals are the Chicago Outfit, run by none other than Al Scarface Capone. Alphonse Gabriel Capone had been born in 1899 in New York City. He joined the notorious 5 Points gang as a young teenager, as a bouncer at brothels. In his early 20s, he moved to Chicago and became a bodyguard to Johnny Torrio. He ran a gang that would become the Chicago Outfit. Torrio's gang was running bootlegging, racketeering, prostitution, extortion, and gambling on the south side of Chicago, and Capone rose through the ranks to become his second in command. It is said Capone's tactics were increasingly violent, upping the game for all the gangs. In 1925, Capone's boss, Johnny Torrio, was shot multiple times. He survived, but he decided his time in the mob was over. His retirement put 26-year-old Capone at the head of the Chicago Outfit. As Capone's power increased, he became a popular figure in Chicago. He was cheered in public and called a modern-day Robin Hood for his donations to causes in the city and running soup kitchens for the poor. He was on great terms with many politicians, and this shielded him and his business.
Bombings, murders of rival gang members, beatings. Chicago was, in the words of its mayor, a wide open town. And O'Banion's death in 1924, Moran's rise to the top, Torrio's retiring and Capone's taking over, and the hatred between the 2 top mobsters set off a war between the 2 biggest gangs in Chicago that ended with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Bugs Moran ran the North Side Gang from the garage of the SMC Cartage Company. The gang's contacts had offered a shipment of bootleg whiskey at a great price, and Moran couldn't resist. The whiskey was supposed to be delivered at the garage at 10:30 a.m. on February 14th, 1929. It happened to be Moran's lucky day. Having slept in that morning, it is said he saw 2 police officers entering the garage, and he knew something was wrong. He didn't stop or enter the building, instead going to a coffee shop.
4 other men did enter that building. 2 were dressed as police officers, and 2 were wearing suits. 2 carried Thompson submachine guns. 7 Northside gang members and associates were there. They were lined up facing a brick wall and gunned down. More than 70 shots were fired.
Because eyewitnesses later said they saw 2 men being led out of the garage with their hands in the air by 2 officers, the police may actually not have been called immediately. When they did arrive, there were 6 dead men strewn across the floor, and 1 man barely alive. Frank Gusenberg was taken to the hospital with 14 gunshot wounds and questioned before he died. He is reported to either have said that no one had shot him or refused to talk at all.
The police investigation turned up little actual information. Between the gangster code of silence and the old snitches get stitches feeling on the streets in Chicago, there weren't many people talking. But Bugs Moran accused Capone of ordering the hit on him from the beginning. Capone claimed he was at his Florida home at the time of the massacre. No one was ever tried for the mass killing. The biggest results of the Valentines Day Massacre was Capone's gang became the most powerful in Chicago. But his reputation was damaged beyond repair, and he was named public enemy number 1. Chicago began to feel pressure from the public to get the mob gangs under control and clean up the city.
And what happened to the 2 men at the root of the massacre? Well, Capone was subpoenaed by a grand jury twice and failed to appear, claiming illness. When he finally appeared, federal agents arrested him for contempt of court. He posted bond and went to Philadelphia, where he was arrested for carrying concealed weapons and jailed for 9 months. When he was released, he returned to Chicago and the contempt charge. He served 6 months in the Cook County Jail for that, and by the time he got out, Eliot Ness and his untouchables were on his trail, eventually arresting, trying, and convicting Capone for tax evasion in 1931. He served time at Alcatraz, and when he was released in 1939, he was quite ill with syphilis. He died in 1947 at his home in Florida.
Bugs Moran never managed to recover from the massacre. His gang continued to run territory in Chicago, but Moran eventually quit the gang, and supposedly the lifestyle, and moved away. In 1939, he was convicted of conspiracy and a scheme to cash more than $60,000 in American Express checks. He was released from jail in 1944 and was penniless. In 1945, he participated in a robbery in a Dayton, Ohio tavern and was sentenced to 20 years. After receiving parole in 1956, he was arrested for a 1945 bank robbery he was involved with and sentenced for another 10 years.
And the SMC Cartage Company garage? It was bulldozed in 1967. The bricks from the wall where 7 men were lined up and shot to death were purchased by a Canadian businessman.
Many were sold to individuals over the years, but some have been put up in display in a mob museum in Las Vegas, Nevada, where they remain to this day.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. And once again,
Happy Valentine's Day.